Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed your dessert. Now we're going to continue with our program and bring up some special speakers. And we also have some very nice videos for you to see tonight for our special honored guest. This time I'd like to welcome the 1986 Indianapolis 500 champion, an IndyCar and IMSA team owner, and proud father of Graham Rahal, and why wouldn't he be? He's also the chairman of the International Motor Racing Research Center Governing Council. Please welcome Bobby Rahal.
Thank you, Jerry. Great to see so many great people. Thanks for coming tonight to honor Chip. Everybody said, oh, you got to roast Chip a little. I said, I can't roast Chip. I mean, how can I roast a guy who's held on to the same sponsor for 25 years when I can't seem to hold on one for a year? So you got to tell me how you do that, Chip. Seriously, Chip has been a great friend over the years. I actually almost drove for Chip one time. Didn't quite work out. I wonder how my career would have been different had I done so. I will say, though, that Chip is a loyal customer of our car dealerships in Pittsburgh, so all is good. But tonight, JC stole most of my material. I have to tell you, about 10 or 12, 15 years ago, I was asked to be on the kind of the governing council, but as in a more honorary position, I suppose. And I've always been a real student of the sport. You know, I grew up reading all the magazines, the car magazines, and what have you, and I was just a fan. And I still am a fan, probably first and foremost. And so it didn't take me much time to say yes, sure, regardless of how much I had going on. And then 2 years ago, my good friend, Mr. Archie Urcioli, who's here tonight, somewhere, Archie, there he is, convinced me that I should take over the role as the chairman of the governing council, which entails a lot of work, regardless of my calendar. And I didn't take a lot of convincing then either, because I really believe in the everything that the research center is doing. You know, when I look around and I see the history there, because I don't know about you, but I personally believe that it's the history of the sport that gives credibility to the sport today. You know, when you go to the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's all about the Lou Gehrigs and the Babe Ruths and what have you. It's not about the guys necessarily today, and I think that's what makes the research center so powerful, is that it's really about the history of the sport, and it's not just Watkins Glen, it's not just road racing, it's not just U.S. based, it's international. And when you see the people who come in there to, as JC said, when you see the people that come in researching subjects for books or what have you from all over the world, it really makes you proud to be a part of it. So, you know, you've already been sold by JC. I'm not going to sell you again, other than if you have the chance to stop by this weekend, tomorrow, Saturday, whatever, please do. I think you'll be very impressed by what you see. I'll also think when you see the boxes all piled up in the aisles that you'll understand the timeliness of our plea, I suppose. But I do want to once again congratulate Chip. I remember when Chip started his team in '89. They were 90, whatever it was. You know, they went through a few years where life wasn't so good, and he stuck with it. And the next thing you know, everybody's trying to catch up to Chip, and you've earned it all, my friend. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bobby. You know, all three major motorsports series that Chip Ganassi's cars compete in are blessed to have some incredibly talented leadership at the top. So why don't we hear from some of that leadership, starting with the Senior Vice President of Competition for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Please welcome Brian Barnhart.
Thanks, Jerry, and good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Holman George family, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and IndyCar, we join with the International Motor Racing Research Center to honor Chip Ganassi, who's become a motorsports icon in his 30-plus years as a driver, a car owner, and a stakeholder. The International Motor Racing Research Center serves a vital purpose in documenting, preserving, and sharing the history of motorsports. And it's fitting that the inaugural Cameron Argetsinger Award be awarded to Chip, because the true history of motorsports couldn't be told without him. As you've already heard before, Cameron Argetsinger was a visionary who revived road racing post-war in America through the roads of Watkins Glen. He brought the Formula One race to Watkins Glen International in 1961, and the United States Grand Prix ran there for 20 years. And Chip himself participated as a driver at the Glen on many occasions, including as an IndyCar driver. While Chip's on-track success is well documented, one of the more underrated accomplishments of his team's ability to foster the longest-standing motorsport relationship in history. As mentioned earlier, Target is celebrating their 25th year anniversary in IndyCar sponsorship with Chip Ganassi Racing, another testament to the strength of his organization. Ganassi-led teams have won 17 championships in over 150 races, including 5 Indianapolis 500s, a Brickyard 400, a Daytona 500, and 5 victories in the prestigious Rolex 24 at Daytona. All of these accomplishments are as Chip as an owner, none as a driver. I'm guessing Chip figured out early that he was better at telling people how to do it than he was at doing it himself. And the team captured its 95th IndyCar victory last weekend at Mid-Ohio after starting dead last. Even more impressive was Chip didn't fall off the pit wall this year as he did the year before. In that race, Scott Dixon joined Alonso Jr. and tied for 6th place on the all-time win list with 34 career Indy victories. And 33 of those for Scott have come as a driver for Chip, which again is also a testament to how he takes care of his people and the longevity of having Scott with him as a driver. And while we're here to celebrate Chip's accomplishments and successes in racing, There's a couple of things I'd like to mention that speak to what kind of a person Chip is. Every year as we send our Christmas cards to friends and colleagues, Chip takes the opportunity to help those in need. As we open our cards from Chip and receive his best wishes, we read that he's made a contribution in our name to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. This obviously speaks volumes to his compassion and benevolence. Combining those traits with his commitment and dedication, you can easily see why Chip is so successful personally and professionally. And on this evening, a special night for Chip, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another staple in the IndyCar paddock, his father, Floyd. I'm sure there's many of us in this room who've received envelopes with photographs from Floyd that were sent to us with plenty of memories of him to go along with those images. We lost Floyd last August 19th of last year. He was a great man with unbelievably positive influence on our community and the racing family. I believe the success, commitment to excellence, and the loyalty that epitomized Target Chip Ganassi Racing are a direct reflection of the influence Floyd had on Chip. It's an important piece of family history for all of us to keep in mind tonight as we honor a legend, a champion who continues to make his mark on the history of motorsports. Chip, it's truly an honor. Congratulations.
Well said, Brian. Very well said. Now please welcome the president of NASCAR, Mike Helton.
Thanks, Doc. What a wonderful evening, and I congratulate the Research Center here for putting this together and honoring Chip and continuing the work on legacy and heritage. I think it's very important in our sport. And there's no more significant place that NASCAR gets to go to, such as Watkins Glen and Indianapolis and Daytona, that reminds us of how fortunate we are to be involved in the industry of motorsports, but more important, those who had the dreams that gave us what we were able to continue with. And remembering those statistics, remembering those families, like the Argetsingers, the Georges, the Francis, and others, who not only had a passion to build motorsports, but they had the wherewithal to take us along and bring us the opportunity along the way. The modern history behind Watkins Glen, Jim Foster told Bill France Jr. one time in the early 80s, that there was a race fan after the Daytona 500 that came to his office and said he lived in Corning and he would like for his company and International Speedway Corporation to get together and revive Watkins Glen because he feels like it could be a very significant piece of the community. And it has a great motorsports history, and he was a big racing fan. That individual turned out to be Jim Reesback, who was an executive here at Corning Glass. And it was his vision and passion that convinced Bill France Jr. and the folks from International Speedway Corporation to get together with them in the community of Corning and Elmira and Watkins Glen and resurrect a great facility, a great iconic name in motorsports. And we've been very fortunate to participate here ever since. So on behalf of John Saunders from ISC, Michael Printup, and his folks at Watkins Glen, and myself and all of our folks at IMSA and NASCAR, we thank this community and the families that made this place happen. In addition to iconic facilities for us to do what we do, it doesn't matter what type of motorsport you've got. You have to have iconic facilities, but in addition to that, you have to have race cars. And many of us need plenty of them. And so race car owners are important to us. Other stakeholders are too, the drivers and the sponsors and the fans and everyone else. But the two critical components that Bill France Sr. taught all of us a long time ago, you got to have race cars and you got to have racetracks. And just as Watkins Glen is unique and special and a great opportunity for many forms of motorsports to participate here and enjoy the energy and enthusiasm that the heritage of this place brings. It's also a great opportunity to have car owners like Chip Ganassi. And that's why we wanted to come here tonight and participate. When you look at the photograph in the center of the program that's laying on your table, that's not photoshopped. That's not a made-up photograph. That's a car owner with very significant hardware. That's the Indianapolis 500, that's the Daytona 500, and that's the 24 hours. And if you stop and think about it and really let it sink in, motorsports is a very challenging business to be in, particularly as a car owner. And there's a few sitting out there that can attest to that. And the more progressive you get, the more challenging it gets. And so when you look at that photograph, understand that in today's world, you can count on one hand, with some fingers taped down, the individuals who are able to compete at the level that Chip Ganassi does today as successfully as he does. And so, Chip, congratulations on your honor tonight. We're proud to be part of it, and we're proud that you're part of our sport. Thank you.
Nicely said, Mike. You know, there's been a lifelong racing rivalry between Chip Ganassi and Roger Penske, whether it's been in IndyCar racing and NASCAR or road racing. There's clearly a great deal of respect between these two, despite their equally avid goals to blow each other's doors off and the frustration they get when one wins over the other. Now, Roger couldn't make it here tonight to honor his friend and rival, but he did send this video, so please take a look.
Chip, you've been a great competitor of ours for many, many years, not only in IndyCar but also in NASCAR. You know, I look up to you, your team, your people. You've just done a terrific job. And to me, for you to receive the inaugural Cameron Argetsinger Award is a great thing for you and your team. As you know, Cam Argetsinger was someone who cared about safety many, many years ago. Your support of racing is very important. And to receive this award from the Motor Racing Research Center, I think is terrific. To you, your team, congratulations. Have a great night in Watkins Glen, and I'll see you at the track.
Yeah, Roger is a consummate gentleman. Now, that's what you see on screen. When we see him at the racetrack, he's frustrated when Chip's guys just spank him at Indianapolis or in the Daytona 500. But anyway, that's nice of Roger to say that and send that in his regrets that he couldn't be here tonight. You know, before I introduce the next speaker, I would like to go around the room and acknowledge some special guests who are here tonight, and I apologize if we eliminate some people. I didn't see some folks come in, but I just want to acknowledge a few folks that I've seen, and if I do, when I mention your name, if you just stand for a moment. We've already heard from NASCAR President Mike Helton, but the second most popular stock car series in the world is the NASCAR Nationwide Series, and we are blessed tonight to have that series director, Wayne Otten. Wayne, would you stand, please? Here tonight is the president of Chip Ganassi Racing, Steve Lauletta. Steve? The Ganassi managing director for IndyCar, and this guy I've known a long time, and he's been with Chip Ganassi 22 years. Now, that's tolerance if I've ever heard of it. Where are you, Mike Hall? There's Mike. Great job, Mike. The Ganassi managing director for NASCAR. I knew this guy back when he was an accomplished road racer as a driver, and now he has got Chip Ganassi's NASCAR program headed in the right direction. Max Jones. Max? And remember this name. For those of you who are open wheel fans, you're going to hear this name a lot in the future. This young man was a 2013 Indy Lights champion, sub for Mimo Rojas on Ganassi's IMSA series twice last year. Is it 18 or 19? Sage, are you 18 or 19? Sage Carum. 19. Wow, 19 years old. How do you get up in the morning, son? And a special thanks to Jim Campbell, the Chevy's U.S. Vice President of Performance Vehicles and Motorsports. Jim, where are you? There's Jim. And another just turned 19-year-old. This young man is a Ganassi development driver in the NASCAR Nationwide Series. He was 18 back in February when he won the pole at Daytona as an 18-year-old and ran in the top 5 and finished in the top 10. Remember his name as well, Dylan Kwasniewski. Dylan, please stand. And here again, if I've missed some folks, I apologize. I just happened to see these folks come in. Now, when Jamie McMurray joined Ganassi Racing's NASCAR team in 2003, he became the Series Rookie of the Year. Then he returned to Ganassi Racing in 2010, and he won 2 of the biggest races in the sport. He won the Daytona 500, and he won the Brickyard 400. And so far in 2014, he won the NASCAR Charlotte Sprint All-Star Race back in May. He's looking for more, getting closer and closer, got really close with a great run last week at Pocono. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ganassi Racing with Felix Savadas, please welcome Jamie McMurray.
All right, so to start with, I just want to thank you guys for letting me be a part of this tonight and to honor Chip. I'm representing all of his past and current drivers, and I feel very honored to be the guy up here getting to talk with you. I started my journey with Chip back in 2002. I never would have guessed signing that first contract in the airplane hangar that you turned out to be such a great friend and also a great mentor to me. I left the team temporarily for a few years, and then I came back in 2010. I'd grown considerably as a man, and the time away really helped me appreciate and understand what a successful car owner and friend that Chip was to me. I've got to share the biggest moments of my racing career with Chip, the Daytona 500, the Brickyard 400, and then this year the Sprint All-Star Race. I remember getting out of the car at Charlotte this year and getting to have that like 2 seconds with Chip and talking about how excited we were and just talking about the just incredible memories that he and I have got to share together. So it was really special. Getting to get up here and talk about him, it would be hard not to try to tell a couple of stories. So I picked a few out that I thought you guys would find a little funny and maybe interesting. And the first one has to do with our team meeting that happens every year at the 24 Hours of Daytona. We typically have 2 cars, and it's really one of the highlights of my year to get to run the sports car, not only because I enjoy the race, but because I get to be a teammate with my other teammates from the IndyCar side and the sports car side. So we get everyone together the day before the race. Mike typically leads the meeting, and Chip normally finishes the meeting. And so after we go around, we talk about strategy and get everything worked out with the spotters. Chip tells the same little speech every year. And it's fun when you've already heard the speech and you know what's going to happen. But for this year, for Sage and Kyle Larson, they hadn't been a part of it, so you kind of know where it's going. And I spent the whole time listening to Chip talk, watching their faces. So anyone who's watched that race or has been a part of it, you know that there's a huge discrepancy in speed from the prototype cars to the GT cars. And there's probably a bigger discrepancy in the ability of the drivers from one car to the other. So, the meeting typically starts off with Chip saying, you need to first off not be in any accidents, and you need to hand the car off to the next guy the way you'd like it handed off to you, which works really well as long as Juan's not your teammate, because Lord knows there'd be like no suspension left on the car by the 3rd round if we all did what Juan did. So Chip goes through a couple of analogies of, look, if you're trying to pass a car in the hairpin and you think he might not know you're there and he turns across your nose, he's like, it tears the nose off, it costs us a lap. He's like, don't come on the radio and say you were involved in an accident. He's like, that was your fault, I've warned you right now. You're like, all right. So then he's like, say you're going into the bus stop, you think you can outbrake the car, you realize at the last second you're not going to be able to outbrake it, you flat spot the tires, you tear the nose off, it's going to cost a lap. He's like, don't come on the radio again and say I've been in an accident, because you haven't. He's like, it's your fault, I'm telling you right now. So at this point, I'm looking at Sage, and I can see that Sage is really excited to be there, and he also does not want Chip to acknowledge that he's sitting in the room this time. And Chip is looking around, trying to find who the weakest guy in the room is to pick on at this point. and he looks at Sage and he says, Sage, and I can see that Sage is like, crap, he said my name, I'm going to have to look at him now. He's like, do you know what an accident is, Sage? And Sage is thinking, well, I thought I did a few minutes ago, but I don't think I do right now. And he said, Sage, an accident is when you're driving down the straightaway at 4 a.m. and a meteor falls out of the sky and hits your car. He's like, at that point, you can say, guys, I've been involved in an accident. Did I do okay? I did good. Okay. So my other story with Chip is probably my favorite memory that I have that I've shared with him, and it goes back to May of 2010. I had won the Daytona 500 that year, and as the Indy 500 approached, Steve Loletta came to me and it said, hey, if one of our guys wins the Indy 500, what do you think about going to Indy? And he had worked out where they were going to have the large Harley J. Earl Daytona 500 trophy at the track, and he said, well, it'll be a great photo opportunity for you. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. So Dario ends up winning the race that we all watched in Charlotte before the 600 race. We run the 600, get up the next morning at 7 a.m. I fly to Indy, and it was a big secret. Chip had no idea that I was coming. And so as I was walking down Gasoline Alley, I could see Chip through the tunnel. And I could see him shaking everyone's hand. He's excited to see everyone. It's a great day. It was cool for me to see that in the first place because I didn't realize what happened on Monday after you won the 500. So Chip turns and he looks at me, and I can tell that he's like a little taken back, like excited to see me, but also, wow, I can't believe you're here. And about that time, there's a show car trailer that has this large Daytona 500 trophy in it, and they start to unload the trophy, and I can see that he's looking at me, and he's also looking at the trophy, and he's figured out like what's getting ready to happen. So really cool moment for me then. We roll the Borg Warner and the Harley J. Earl trophy to the front stretch. Chip stands in the middle, and I saw the photo they played here a little bit ago, and it was just it was a great memory for me because as a group we all sat out there and we talked about how we got to be a part of making racing history. Only guy to ever win those two races in the same year, and when I look back at that, I can't imagine that's ever going to happen again. And really cool stuff for me, Chip. I appreciate it. So thanks to all you guys for letting me be a part of this. I've listened to all the stories, and it's so great what you guys have going on here. I hope I get to be a part of this for many years to come. And to Chip, well, I hope that we get to make a lot more history together. So thank you guys.
You know, Jamie's sponsors in NASCAR are Cessna and McDonald's. And what many of you may not realize is that McDonald's was so overwhelmed with his ability, his marketing and PR and what he did, winning Daytona and the Brickyard, that they decided to name a sandwich. The Big Mac is actually named after Jamie McMurray. And yeah, exactly. And if you think they were going to slight the car owner, they wanted to name something after the car owner. But for those of us that grew up on a farm, a sandwich named the Big Chip would not be that tasty. So, folks, we're going to have a little more fun as the night goes on. So stay tuned. It turns out Chip Ganassi, has a following in all forms of motorsports, not just the IndyCar, NASCAR, and the Tudor Series. Ladies and gentlemen, please set your eyes on the video screen for a message from 16-time NHRA Funny Car champion, John Force.
Hi, I just want to say hi. I'm John Force, NHRA Funny Car champion, multi-car team owner. As the one there tonight, Chip Ganassi, being honored for the Cameron R. Argetsinger Award. Pretty cool. Be there with all those NASCAR folks. Enjoy the evening, Chip. You earned it, and let's get back on the road. Let's win some more championships. So God bless you and all of you, and enjoy the evening.
How cool is that? John Force is 65 years old and continues to win championships and just be at the top of his sport. And I know those of you are wondering, what's the connection between John Force and Chip Ganassi? Well, I can tell you it's simple. Both of them do some of their best work in 8 seconds or less. I told you we're going to have more fun as the night goes on. So, all right, here we go. You know, we're getting closer to where I sit down with Chip and we talk about some of the great moments in his life and some of the special people as the inaugural Cameron R. Argetsinger Award winner. But before we do that, we want to show a video that's a tribute to Chip, and you may recognize the voice on this video. It is voiced by a 4-time IndyCar Series champion who was a 3-time Indy 500 winner. He retired last year, but he remains an integral part of Ganassi racing. Here is a video and the voice of Dario Franchitti.
If only Chip Ganassi had been born some 100 years earlier, there's no doubt he would have been a most successful riverboat gambler. You know, one of those guys who always manages to pull an ace out of his sleeve.
I think you're trying to buy it. Ace.
At just the right moment. Right from the start, Chip was street smart. Always went for it. After some early success driving Formula Ford and IMSA cars, he decided it was time to up the ante and enter the Indianapolis 500. And I think he even surprised himself by being the fastest rookie qualifier in 1982. He soon began to show some real talent behind the wheel as an IndyCar driver, scoring podium finishes at Laguna Seca and Las Vegas. Then he had what you might call a life-changing moment at over 200 miles an hour at Michigan International Speedway. Chip quickly recovered and returned to driving, but like any smart riverboat gambler, he realized that there's a time to hold them and there's a time to fold them.
Well, I would hope that he would give it up. As a mother, I don't want to see him on that track again.
I supported Chip in his endeavor to drive because he was going to drive anyhow.
And perhaps now was the time to shift his focus from being a driver to being a team owner. With sage advice from his dad, Floyd, a successful Pittsburgh businessman, Chip figured out right from the start that a race team has to be run like a business. That is, if it's going to succeed. So he first gained some valuable management experience with the 1989 championship-winning Patrick IndyCar team. The next year, he founded Chip Ganassi Racing, with sponsorship from an energetic young department store chain, Target. It took a while for success to come. In fact, it was 4 long years before Michael Andretti scored the team's first victory in Australia. But along the way, Chip learned a key lesson. You're never going to beat Roger Penske by trying to out-Penske the captain. You've got to play a different hand, and that meant going with your gut, being a riverboat gambler. He took huge risks, switching engine suppliers, chassis builders, and tire companies, all to gain that unfair advantage. He also launched a NASCAR team with Felix Sabates, along with an IMSA Daytona prototype team. And he gambled by hiring unknown drivers like Jimmy Vasser, Alex Zanardi, Juan Montoya, Scott Dixon, and Kyle Larson, to name a few. And he also hired a somewhat over-the-hill Scotsman with an Italian name. That seemed to work out pretty good. His secret, being totally upfront with his drivers. And I mean totally upfront.
He looks those guys right between the eyes and he sizes up where they are.
Chip doesn't continue to praise you, but when you have a bad weekend, he's one of the first guys that'll call and tell you that it's going to be okay and we're going to work through it and to move on to the next race.
And that's what I love about Chip. I mean, he's refined when he needs to be, he's raw when he needs to be, he's very focused on doing a job, and that job is going racing.
Chip even tested the waters as a potential Hollywood movie star with this memorable performance in the blockbuster film, Driven.
Everybody's off the pace. Bly and Tanto are coming on strong. It's incredible. I can't believe it. Tanto's out of it. Don't worry about Tanto.
Fortunately, he decided to stick with his day job because it all came together for the Ganassi teams. And boy, did he go on a roll.
Here he goes, and he gets him! Alex Zanardi with a brilliant move. Takes the checkered flag.
He's been stellar on the super speedways.
Jamie McMurray wins at Talladega.
Juan Montoya wins the 84th Indian
no stopping that Telmex BMW Riley.
We are the champions.
Checkered flag in the air. The 52nd Daytona 500 to Jamie McMurray.
Got it, man. We won. That was so awesome. Oh, my God.
Huh.
Nicely done by Dario and the entire Ganassi Racing organization. This time I'd like to invite J.C. Argetsinger and Bobby Rahal to please come back to the stage. Gentlemen, if you would come up here and on either side of the trophy. I think we're going to have some help to move the trophy up toward the front. If you guys would place yourselves on either side. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man of the evening and the inaugural winner of the Cameron R. Argetsinger Award for outstanding contributions to motorsports. Here is Chip Ganassi. These guys are going to get a photograph, and then Chip's going to sit down and we're going to talk. You want to pick that up and hold it for a photo op? How about that? You guys want to stand together, all three there on either side of the trophy, and we'll get a couple of photographs. Are these working? You hear us okay? All right. So at this point of the program, before we let Chip respond to all the people who have talked tonight, and he will have his chance in a few minutes to respond or retaliate, whichever he'd like to do, we're going to talk a little bit about Chip Ganassi. And there's no rhyme or reasons to what we ask or where we go. We're just sort of going to start. But many of you may think you know Chip, and I thought I knew Chip, but you know, he told me earlier tonight, Chip, this is not the first time you've been to the Corning Museum. Tell us about your first visit here.
Thanks, Jerry. Hello? Okay. Yeah, this is not my first time here. As a young boy growing up, my father was always hard at work, and my mother would take my cousin, my sister and I, and my cousins and my aunt. We'd go on these little jaunts. Some of you heard the story. And we'd take these little weekend trips from Pittsburgh, you know, maybe to Washington, D.C., or, you know, Cleveland or Niagara Falls or something. And she said, New York. And she said, one time we're going to go to the Finger Lakes region. And I was, you know, 10 or 11 years old. I said, where's that? And she said, well, it's up in New York. And I said, well, what's there? And she said, we're going to go to the Corning Glass Works. I said, what's that? And she said, well, you know, my mother always liked these pieces of crystal and glass and whatever. And she said, well, it's near Watkins Glen. And when she said Watkins Glen, my eyes just perked up, opened up. So we came to Corning, of course, and for lunch, we went over into Watkins Glen, and we drove down and went, of course, to the Glen Motor Inn for lunch. And I was just, you know, looking at every single thing I could, anything that looked for a car as we drove through town. We drove up past the circuit, but I mean, it was nothing going on there that particular day. We get to the Glen Motor Inn, and believe it or not, there was something going on at the track. They were tire testing, and in the Glen Motor Inn, having lunch, was Mario Andretti, Jackie Stewart, and Joe Sifford. And my mother actually went over and asked for their autograph. I was too nervous to ask for an autograph. But I tell Mario that story from time to time. And, you know, he said, quit reminding me how old I am. But so I've been to the Corning Glass Works, and I've been to the museum, and it's changed quite a bit, and you can certainly be proud of what you have here. Thank you.
Great story. Let's talk a little bit about the big picture. You know, a lot of car owners in this economy the last decade or so have struggled just to keep the doors open, much less stay competitive. Not only have you been competitive in 3 series, you have won races, you've won marquee events, you've won championships. Chip, this is the 25th anniversary of Chip Ganassi Racing. What is the key to your longevity as a car owner and keeping this going and going successfully?
That's a good question, Jerry. I guess I'm too afraid to do anything else, or too lazy to work and too nervous to steal, as they say. I don't know. You know, I've been really lucky. You know, you don't do these things by yourself. It's that simple. I mean, there's, you know, I can go back to the start of my career with people. Obviously, my mother and father, the support of my mother and father. You know, over the years, you know, from you know, the last few years, they both passed away. But people like, you know, people that some of you may know in this room, a guy by the name of Dick Scott from Pittsburgh was a big influence early on in my career. Started racing, and you know, we all remember Joe Stamola over in New York. You know, another guy that's not with us any longer, had a great impact on my career at an early age. And then not too long after that was a guy named Tom Davey. And Tom, where are you? I want you to stand up. Where's Tom Davey? Stand up. That guy right there, ladies and gentlemen, he's the one in my racing career that made me realize I could maybe do this at a little more of a level than an amateur racer, racing my Formula Ford around. And Tom, I thank you for that, and that was a great film you put together tonight. Thank you. Some other people, you know, you don't do this stuff, Jerry, by yourself. I don't mean to make a long-winded question as to why I'm in racing for 25 years. But there's a group of guys over here, not my management team, but a group of guys that I've raced over the years with, that I came to Watkins Glen with to watch races. I drove up here in motorhomes with them and camped out on the outside of the chicane with those guys. And I'd like those guys from Pittsburgh to stand up right now. Where's Ralph and Jeff and the Clements, Dr. Clements and Kirk Clements, Mark Gurman. Guys that they've been around my racing career for a long time, and so I don't know, how do you stay racing for 25 years? I never say no to our sponsor. I tell all our people. I tell Steve Ouellette, our president that was introduced earlier. He knows, and Mike and Max. I mean, when they're talking to the sponsors, there's 2 answers they give: okay and yes. and so I don't know. We just stay at it every day. I'm fortunate that I can be in it every day, 7 days a week. I don't have any car dealerships. I don't have any, you know, I don't do business with Chevrolet and Ford or whoever in Detroit. We race, and that's all we do. And I'm pretty proud of that, and I'm very, very honored to be able to do that. Very lucky, and you know, and it's to you know, just again thinking about racing up here at Watkins Glen. This is like my home track, ladies and gentlemen, and it's one of only 2 tracks where all 3 of the disciplines we race in, we've won in here. And I think winning is important in this business. You know, racing is still about racing. It's still about winning. And my first years racing a Formula Ford with Michael Argetsinger. Michael and I raced against each other a lot up here, Michael, and I never thought I'd be here tonight doing this, you know, with something with your father's name on it. It's shocking to me, actually.
Chip, let's go back to the beginning, and some of the folks I've heard part of the story from several people, including your dad, but talk about how it all began for you. I think the 1963 Indianapolis 500 had something to do with it.
Right, thanks, Jerry. My father was in the asphalt paving business, and he went to an equipment auction in Indianapolis, and of course, like most people in those, you know, that go to Indianapolis, they go for a tour of the racetrack on the bus. And he came home with an 8mm film of the 1963 Indy 500, and I was all of 5 years old in 1963, and I used to watch that. I watched Parnelli win that race 100 times. I bet easily 100 times. I shot that thing against the wall, and just went later on to be friends with Parnelli. Of course, got to meet him as I got to be a driver there at Indianapolis, and most recently celebrated Thanksgiving with Parnelli this past Thanksgiving in Scottsdale, Arizona. So it's just kind of interesting how it comes full circle. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And my father went on to pave a go-kart track soon after that, and the guy didn't pay him. So we end up with 3 go-karts in the garage, and literally the steering wheel was this big, and I couldn't reach the pedals. So yeah, they sat there for a long time. I salivated for about a year before I could even drive them.
Okay, from go-karts, you became an IndyCar driver. Let's talk a little bit about what you remember and cherish most about your times. And there's some photographs outside, by the way. You came into the cocktail reception. You got to see Chip in the IndyCar. Just thoughts about your years as a driver.
I remember little things about each series that you're in along the way. Formula Ford in the late 70s was just a great class of cars, of racing. My good friend Kip Laughlin and I, as you heard earlier, he finished in 1980 at the runoffs. Lobenberg had us beat. He had Arnie Loining engines, and Kip and I had Stamola engines. I think we were a little down on horsepower, of course. And but Kip had me at the bridge at Road Atlanta by about 2 inches. And in Formula Ford, that's the world, as some of you know that have raced those cars. So he finished second, and I finished third there. I remember that about Formula Ford. Super V, then the following year, remember here at Watkins Glen, Super V, what sticks out in my mind is Super V was in a hell of a crash at Michigan on the oval there. And Greg Atwell was on top of me, and Pete Halsmer was sideways in front of me, and just a hell of a crash. And that was kind of the end of my Super V career, a couple races before the end of the season. And then, of course, going to Indianapolis in '82 with a small team, and we were fastest rookie there. We qualified, was really fortunate. We qualified late in the afternoon. The sun had gone down, and all these superstars that were there, like Ray Hall and Sullivan, and they had qualified earlier in the day in the heat. So I, of course, set my fastest time all month on that particular afternoon. So I was pretty happy with that. And, of course, winning that race and winning the big races is always something that sticks out in your mind. Indianapolis or Daytona, our first 24 hours, Jamie's Brickyard, championships with Juan or Dario or Dixon, Pruitt. You don't do this by yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the one up here, but there are hundreds and hundreds of people that are behind me in this endeavor. And I wish I could have every one of them. I wish I could name every one and have every one of them up here. This is simply they can all take a little piece of this award and this career that I've been so lucky to have.
We mentioned, Chip, at the top of the show, some of the numbers: 17 championships, 150 wins, 5 Indy 500s, 5 Rolex 24s, Daytona, Brickyard, 12 hours of Sebring. Incredible record. But in 2010, you win the Daytona 500, with Jamie. You win the Indy 500 with Dario, and I'm standing at the bottom of the steps on the pit box watching you and Felix Sabates as Jamie's coming back to win the Brickyard 400, and I couldn't tell who was Felix. I couldn't tell because you were both jumping up and down with arms gyrating and hollering and screaming. You looked like 2 Felix Sabateses up there, and normally you're pretty sedate and relaxed, but that was such a joyous moment. You became the first and only car owner ever to win those 3 races in a single season. What did that mean to you?
Jerry, it's interesting, but to have those records like that, and you hear all people in sports say this. They say, "Well, I'll look back on that someday when I'm a grandfather, and it'll mean something," And really, in 2010, the thing I was most proud of in 2010 was every one of our drivers found victory lane that year, and it was just one of those years when we could do no wrong. And we've certainly had some of the opposite types of years, but we had 7 or 8 drivers that year, and every one of them found victory lane. And that to me is what stood out in 2010. I mean, obviously, being the only guy to win those races ever in the same year was something that I don't know. I hope the record gets beat someday, because that means there'll be somebody as devoted to this sport as much as we are. But I mean, it was just one of those years where, you know, we've all had, anybody in racing knows, you know, you win some races that you maybe shouldn't have won, and you lose a bunch that you should have won. So it's, you know, you never know how the hell it's going to fall that day.
You know, I think we touched on it, and Brian Barnhart mentioned it. I know your parents were a major part of your success. You talk about your mom bringing you here to get those autographs. For those of us who started racing 30 years ago, we got to be around the track and saw the big bear hugs from Floyd and got the pictures in the mail. Just talk about what your mom and dad meant and Floyd in those last few years, because he loved to be there and see you be successful at the racetrack.
Yeah, you know, it's really special because early, you know, as my friends over there from Pittsburgh can tell you, you know, my dad wasn't a big fan of this business when I first got started in it. You know, he didn't come to the races much, and only when I got to the upper levels of the sport did he begin to get interested. And you know, I guess for obvious reasons. I mean, there were more people there he could interact with. You know, but he was, you know, he and my mother were always supportive of me. You know, wanting to do it, not necessarily like most children of parents. You know, maybe not necessarily on the timetable that I wished, but you know, as it turned out, everything turned out okay in the end. But you know, I obviously couldn't have done it without them at the start. You know, certainly at the beginning, and you wouldn't be anywhere, you know, without them, for that matter. So it's pretty special to be there with them, with both of them, and enjoy the wins. I'll just say one thing. You know, my father gets a lot of attention. And I want to give you a quick story about my mother. She didn't come to many races, but she watched on television. And she was watching that day when you saw that crash at Michigan, and people started coming to the house with coffee and donuts and things, and in their suits and what have you. But another time, I came home from the race, and she said, "Oh," she called me Chipper. She said, "Chipper, how'd the race go today?" I said, "Oh, Mom," I said, "we ran out of gas." And she had the greatest comeback ever. She said, "I thought the fuel was free." And so that's kind of the sense of humor my mother had, you know. That's great. So.
What a great story. Yeah, that's she knew you well. Yeah, that's what a great story. You know, I guess we'll finish up here with the question. But you know, people have submitted questions, by the way. Some from the audience, some other areas. And this one, you know, people wanted you to ask, what is Chip Ganassi's secret to success? And you've had so much of it across the board. I know the parents were a major part, and you talked a little bit about the people that you surrounded yourself. But why have you been so successful in every endeavor in motorsports?
Real simple, Jerry. It's the people around you. You can't, like I said, you don't do any of this yourself. And there's a lot of talent at these tables, you know, with Steve. I realized early on, ladies and gentlemen, you know, and I guess all people are like this to some extent. You know, you realize what part of your job you like and what part of it, you know, what part of it you don't like. And I've been lucky to be able to work with guys like Mike and Max for the part of the business that I enjoy. And I've been lucky to work with people like Steve Loletta and his team for parts of the business that I don't enjoy. But it works out well because we, you know, they're all great people in their particular areas, and I wouldn't be sitting here without them. It's that simple, and not even to mention the great drivers that we've had over the years. I mean, you still have to have somebody that pushes the pedals, and you know, you go back to Michael there with our first win, or you know, Ari Leyendyke or Vassar and Zanardi, and then Montoya comes along, and then, you know, Kenny Brack, and then getting into NASCAR with Sterling and his first win for Dodge. Having Jamie, you know, people fail to mention Jamie won his second race out with us in 2002, 2002. Hello?
Charlotte, right? Second start ever?
Toss me a little bone here, boys.
2002 at Charlotte.
When was that?
October
Jamie.
2002, right?
2002. Yeah, he won his second race out with us at Charlotte. I don't think anybody remember. You know, don't forget that. That was pretty impressive there too. And you know, so you have to have guys in your cars that are gamers. You know, Scott Pruitt's a gamer. We had Marino Franchitti just drive a one-off for us at Sebring this past year. He's a gamer. You know, he got in the car at the last stint, drove to the front, and you know, stayed ahead of other cars that were arguably faster cars for the last 17 laps or so at Sebring this year. I thought was a big statement. You know, lots and lots of great drivers over the years. That really helps. It's Ron Dennis told me once, drivers are way cheaper than technology. So, yeah.
Pretty much sums it up. Well, as the inaugural Cameron R. Argetsinger Award winner for outstanding contributions to motorsports, Chip, I was told here at the end to give you a chance to tell the people here tonight what this night and what this award means to you.
Thanks, Jerry. I mean, you know, like I said earlier, I consider Watkins Glen my home track. I won races here myself in a Formula Ford. Like I said, all of our cars have won here, the sports car, the Indy cars, our Cup car. Met some great people in this area over the years in the sport. Like I said, one of my earliest acquaintances here in Watkins Glen was Michael Argetsinger. Michael, stand up. And you know, Michael and I raced Formula Fords, and he was one of the good guys, you know, that I raced against, and I lost a little touch with him. And then, of course, you know, seeing his brothers involved here at the research center, and over the years, I always wondered what happened to Mike. And the first thing I said when I got here tonight, and I ran into JC, what's the first thing I said to you? Right. You hear that, Michael? Where's Michael? It's the first thing I wanted to know. And so just, you know, and being from Pittsburgh is kind of right down the road, you know, almost, although it's a little hard to get here from Pittsburgh. But it's about the people in this region of the country, I think, that means so much. And obviously, Cameron Argetsinger was of that ilk. And I think that's important. And I don't have to go into what that means to be from this part of the country, because most of you know it, because most of you are from around here. And but it's great to be at arguably a birthplace of motorsports in this country, and certainly to have the research center here is a worthy thing, and they have me as a supporter for a long time, I can assure you. And what means most to me is all of you coming out here tonight and just being a part of something great, and for the research center, and to help out. And let's all dig in our pockets and get it going here. Okay, thanks.
Well said, Chip. Now thank you. There's a tradition that will begin tonight. And on your table, you will have glasses. And so we are going to stand and do a toast to our honoree tonight. And after that, we have one more piece of business. So there are icons in business, and there are legends in motorsports, and they all have very similar traits. They all are driven, they all are visionaries, and they're all looking for the next great challenge. Many of us in this room tonight would describe Chip Ganassi with a single word. Some would say friend. Some would say colleague. Some would say competitor. But I think we would all use one word to describe Chip if you look at what he's done and what we've known him for, and that is winner. So tonight, let's toast winner Chip Ganassi. Cheers. Now we could have JC come back up and Bobby Rahal come back up, please. And I'd like to, there's been a very unique painting of Chip Ganassi's success that has been commissioned. And I'd like to create it by artist Bob Gillespie. Bob, if you would come up here and give us a little bit of background on this painting. Where are you, Bob? Bob's going to come up here and talk about, this is a one-of-a-kind painting that is being commissioned tonight for Chip. Bob?
Thank you, Jerry. Yes. First thing I would say is I am totally honored and feel very proud to be part of this evening and to be selected to do the painting to commemorate Chip and all of his victories. I would like to, when we do show pictures of the painting, we try to get it in an angle where it won't pick up the glare, because I got about 5 coats of gloss varnish on that thing. And it's UV proof, but it is not visual light proof for glare. Chip mentioned something that really caught my attention about his father not being particularly encouraging to his career. I have to tell you, just quick off, that when I first started this painting, and I painted our breakfast table, my 93-year-old father comes in for breakfast every morning. He took a look at the painting. It was just started, and I asked him what he thought of it, and he said, "Well, I won't use any 4-letter words." So I can relate, Chip. I can. Also, one little other anecdote I wanted to mention first is that my wife was cleaning our attic yesterday, and she came across 2 little items here. This was a total shocker. They are NASCAR Grand National 150 tickets that are dated July 19th, 1964. This is my general admission ticket, which was $4, and then my grandstand ticket, which was $2. Yes, Michael. I know Michael has moved the decimal point. So, next thing that happens is my daughter got a hold of the news. She had these photographed. She put it on her Facebook page, and she says, "Look, Dad, you never throw anything away." But I think that was a good thing that I didn't do that. I'd like to thank all the folks at the International Motor Racing Research Center for commissioning me to do this painting. A special thanks to my good friend Michael Argetsinger and Glenda Gephardt. Michael for supplying photo resources and encouragement, and Glenda for coordinating everything and keeping me looking at the calendar for deadlines, such as tonight. Yesterday I was putting the frame on this thing. After accepting the job, I quickly realized how difficult it would be to do justice to Chip's various teams in a single painting. I was imagining what would be needed would be something the size of the Sistine Chapel of racing, with all Ganassi's heroic drivers and their cars painted on the ceiling. All these little bits and pieces of these wonderful victories. But our very own IMRRC does not have a ceiling big enough to contain all your team's successes. We simply need a bigger ceiling. And I did hear references to an addition this evening a couple of times. Anyway, given the job at hand, I had to select or cherry pick a few images that had a particular attraction. I couldn't just represent everything. It would be full of these little tiny dots of color. And I want to say here that it's easy to be a Chip Ganassi fan because he has had and continues to have so many inspiring cars and drivers. I went through literally hundreds of resource photographs and came up with some that had lots of appeal. One that I kept gravitating back to was a black and white shot of Chip from the 1970s aboard a Formula Ford, waving high the checkered flag. Talk about foreshadowing future team victories. This was perfect. And if you look in the clouds, you will see Chip holding the flag, and he is inspiring everybody else in the scene. I ended up also choosing Juan Pablo Montoya in his 2000 Indianapolis winner, Dario Franchitti in his 2010 Indy 500 winning car, Jamie McMurray in the car that won the Daytona 500 and Brickyard 400 in 2010, and for a Grand Am or Tudor Series sports car, I had to go with this year's Sebring winner of Scott Pruitt, Marino Franchitti, and Memo Rojas. That victory was just so impressive, and I think it's an absolutely gorgeous car. I love the looks of that Ford Riley. It ended up that the Jamie McMurray photo contained the entire concept of the painting. It was a picture of Jamie doing a burnout after, I believe, the Daytona 500, and there was just so much smoke, and a lot more than even I put in the painting there. Smoke and more smoke. I've studied a lot of art history and believe that primarily a good painting communicates and provokes emotion. If a painting can tell a story, then that adds an additional dimension. All the tire smoke reminded me of the great Italian artist Giambattista Tiepolo of the 18th century. With a name like that, he could drive for you. Tiepolo flattered his 18th century patrons by placing them in the clouds. Hey. The feeling here is, for me, a lofty excitement, and the story is that all of Chip's successes started way back when he was driving that Formula Ford during a victory lap, holding the checkered flag high. All the cars are speeding from this center, winning everything in sight. P.S. If you look closely, you might even see a hint of the Sistine Chapel right in the center, with cloud fingers reaching out and almost touching, like Michelangelo's creation. Nothing grandiose here. If there is, Chip deserves it.
Thank you very much, Bob. You know, this is a one-of-a-kind commissioned artwork, and the last thing we're going to do tonight is we are going to very quickly auction this off. We're going to auction this one-of-a-kind artwork off, and you know where the money's going. It's going to a great cause for this incredible museum and library. So we're going to start very quickly, and we're going to open the bids at $1,250. So we have a bid, $1,250, $1,250. Yes, okay. Do I hear $1,300, $1,300? $1,300, okay, $1,350, $1,350, one of a kind, $1,500, thank you. Money going to a great cause. We're going to do it quickly, $1,500, going once, do I hear $1,550? $1,550, $1,550. $1,600? $2,000, thank you, $2,000, one of a kind artwork, great guys. Over there, the Chip Ganassi Racing guys that have been a part of that organization for 2 decades. $2,000. Do I hear $2,050? Pardon me? $2,500. $2,500. Great bid. $2,500 going to a great cause. Do I hear $2,750? I'm sorry? $2,750. $2,750. $2,750. $3,000. $3,000. Sistine Chapel, Juan Pablo Montoya. You kidding me? Got a Franchitti in there, got a McMurray, got the Argent of the Big Mac. $3,000. $3,000, we got $3,000. Let's go $3,500. Anybody got $3,500? $3,500, $3,500, $3,500. How about $3,250? $3,250. $3,250. Okay, $3,000 going once. Last $3,000 going twice. Uh-oh. Sage, meteor hit you. $3,250. Youngest guy in the room. Hasn't even gotten paid yet. Wow. Now that's what I call a smart race car driver. That guy's a smart. Hey, you're going to go far, son. You don't worry about those meteors anymore. $3,250. $3,250 from Sage Karam. $3,250. Who's going to bid against this kid? No one can bid against this kid. $3,250 going once. $3,250 going twice. And Sage, $3,250. Thank you, young man. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Congratulations, Chip Ganassi. Have a great evening, safe travels home, and have a blessed weekend. Good night. Thank you.